Welcome to Myth Break. Today I'm bringing you a full hour of myths, lies, and facts you were taught wrong about your skin, your bones, your brain, and even about how you breathe. It's not your fault. Everyone got told the same things. At school, at home, and on TV. I'm here to take them apart one by one, quick and with proof on the table. Hold on tight, smash that like button, subscribe, and don't go anywhere, because this starts right now. It sounds like science fiction, but your body gives off its own faint glow all the time. The thing is, it's so weak your eyes can't detect it. The chemical processes in your cells, as they use oxygen, release a tiny amount of light, a phenomenon called ultra-weak bioluminescence. It's thousands of times dimmer than what the human eye can pick up, which is why you've never noticed it. It could only be captured with special, super sensitive cameras in total darkness. It's not some magical aura or anything like that. It's simply a physical byproduct of your cell's metabolism. You literally glow, even if the intensity is ridiculously low. You're a light bulb that's almost off but never quite finishes going out. You're giving off light without realizing it, all day long, switched on in secret. Try it right now. Run your fingers along your ribs or the sole of your foot. Nothing happens. You touch yourself the same way someone else would tickle you, and absolutely nothing happens. And it's not because you already know it's coming. It's something more subtle than that. Your brain, with help from the cerebellum, predicts the movement of your own hand and cancels out the sensation before it even arrives. Since you're the one generating the touch, the system flags it as, "I'm doing this myself," and turns the volume down so it doesn't waste your attention on useless tickling. When someone else touches you though, your brain can't predict it. It gets caught off guard and the laughter bursts out. It's a custom-built anti-surprise filter. Your own hand is never going to surprise you. And without surprise, there's no tickling. You grab the baking pan without a mitt, it burns you, and you yank your hand back instantly. You'd think your brain saw the danger and gave the order to let go. Actually, it's the opposite. Your brain shows up late to that party. The order comes from your spinal cord, which builds a shortcut called a reflex arc. The pain signal travels up the nerve, the spinal cord bounces it back and sends the order to contract the muscle. All before the information even reaches the brain. That's why you've already pulled your hand away, and only afterward do you feel the pain and think, "Ouch! I burned myself." The difference is milliseconds. But with a burn, milliseconds means saved skin. Your spinal cord is the bodyguard that shoves you out of the way before you even know there's danger. The boss reacts, but the employee is the one who saved you. Someone has blue eyes and you assume they have blue pigment in their iris, like a coat of sky blue paint. False, and this one will blow your mind. There's no blue pigment anywhere in the human eye. Light-colored eyes simply have very little melanin, which is a brown pigment. When there's little of it, the light entering the iris scatters and bounces in a way that makes us see blue, the exact same physical phenomenon that makes the sky look blue without any paint up there at all. It's structural color, not pigment. That's why, depending on the light, blue eyes can look more gray or more intense. The blue in those eyes is a trick of physics, just like the skies. There's no little can of sky blue paint in there. There's just very little melanin and a lot of light playing hide and seek. You flex your bicep, it bulges up, and you think, "This is the strongest muscle I've got." Wrong, not even close. In terms of strength relative to its size, the champion is the masseter, the jaw muscle you use to chew. It's short and you can't really see it, but it generates a brutal bite force capable of topping 110 to 150 pounds of pressure on your back molars. A bicep moves a dumbbell. The masseter could crack a walnut without breaking a sweat. It has plenty of mechanical advantage because it works right up against the joint, like a short lever that multiplies everything. You train your arms at the gym while the real powerhouse sits right next to your face, clenching every time you eat a steak. The strongest muscle for its size isn't the one you show off at the beach. It's the one you use at a barbecue. When people ask what the biggest organ in the body is, almost everyone blurts out the liver. Some say the brain. The more ambitious ones go with the intestine. Wrong, everyone misses it. The biggest organ is the one you're wearing right now, wrapped around your entire body. It's your skin. In an average adult, it weighs around 9 pounds and, stretched out, covers nearly 22 square feet, more than any organ on the inside. And it's not just a simple bag that covers you, it's a living organ that regulates your temperature, warns you about pain, makes vitamin D from sunlight, and blocks bacteria like a wall. You touch it all day long and never once thought of it as an organ. It's the biggest, the heaviest, and on top of that, the one you can see the most. You had it on the whole time and never even noticed. You get a headache and assume what's actually hurting is the brain itself on the inside. False. And this always catches people off guard. The brain itself has no pain receptors. It can't feel pain on its own. That's actually why, in certain surgeries, doctors can operate on the brain while the patient is awake without that part hurting at all. What actually hurts when you have a headache are other structures around it. The muscles of the scalp and neck, the blood vessels, and the membranes that wrap around the brain, which do have pain sensors. Those areas tense up or get irritated and send the signal. The brain processes pain from your entire body, but it's incapable of hurting itself. It feels on behalf of everything else, but not for itself. The organ in charge of pain can't feel pain. Pure irony right inside your own head. You'd assume you were born with a certain number of bones, and that number could only go up or stay the same as you grew. Actually, it's the opposite. Babies are born with around 300 bones, and adults have around 200. So where did the missing ones go? Well, they didn't disappear, they fused together. Many of a baby's bones are made up of separate pieces or soft cartilage that, as they grow, gradually join together to form bigger, more solid bones. The skull is a great example. It's born as several separate plates with soft gaps between them, and those plates fuse together later on. That's why you end up with fewer bones than you started with, but sturdier ones. You lost pieces in the count, but gained in strength. Fewer bones, better built. Life keeps welding your skeleton together. You've heard that blood comes out blue or purple and turns red the moment it touches the air. That's a myth. Your blood is always red. What changes is the shade of red, depending on how much oxygen it's carrying. Blood loaded with oxygen, the kind that leaves the lungs, is a bright red. Blood that's already delivered its oxygen to your tissues and is heading back to the heart is a darker brick-like red, but it's never blue. Veins look bluish from the outside because of how your skin filters light, not because the blood inside is actually blue. When you get blood drawn for a test, even from a vein, it comes out red, a darker red. But red! The air doesn't transform it from blue to red. Red going in, red coming out. Only the brightness changes depending on the oxygen. There was never any blue blood in your veins. Stick around. This one's about to get good. In Myth 22, you're going to find out that something you do at the hair salon doesn't do anything you think it does. Keep watching. It's coming up. You were told that artists use the right side of the brain and logical people use the left, and that everyone is one-sided. That's a well-studied and thoroughly debunked myth. There's no such thing as being a right-brained person or a left-brained person. It's true that some functions lean more heavily on one side. For example, language tends to rely quite a bit on the left, but for any reasonably complex task, both hemispheres work together, connected by a huge bundle of fibers that keep them talking to each other constantly. Brain scans have shown there's no such thing as people who dominantly use one side over the other based on their personality. You're creative and logical with your whole brain, not with half of your head. The two sides are partners, not rivals. The idea of picking a team inside your skull is pure fiction. You bang your elbow on the edge of a table, that awful electric tingle shoots through your arm, and you say, "I hit my funny bone." Completely wrong from top to bottom, since it's neither a bone nor has anything funny about it. What you actually hit is a nerve, the ulnar nerve, which at the elbow runs very close to the surface, with almost nothing protecting it. When you press it against the bone, you send a direct jolt shooting all the way down your arm to your pinky and ring fingers. That's why the sensation feels so strange. It's pure nerve electricity, not bone pain. The funny name came about because the bone in your upper arm is called the humerus, which sounds a lot like humor. Just a language joke, nothing more. You hit a live wire, not some cute little funny bone. You count them off on your fingers. Sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. 5. Done. Way too incomplete. That list of 5 senses fell short a long time ago. You have several more that you use constantly without ever giving them a name. There's proprioception, which is knowing where every part of your body is without looking. That's why you can touch your nose with your eyes closed. There's your sense of balance, which lives in your inner ear and keeps you standing upright. There's thermoception, which senses cold and heat, and nociception, which detects pain. You also feel when you're hungry, thirsty, or when your bladder is full. Scientists debate the exact number, but they agree it's quite a bit more than 5. The classic list is kindergarten level. Your body has a much more complete lineup of sensors than you were ever told about. You've had it drilled into you that food drops into the stomach, and that's where digestion actually kicks off. As if the mouth were just a doorway. Told wrong. Digestion starts in your mouth, well before you even swallow. When you chew, you break the food into small pieces and add saliva to it, which isn't just water. Saliva carries an enzyme called amylase that already starts breaking starches down into simpler sugars. That's why, if you chew a piece of bread for a good while without swallowing it, it starts tasting sweet in your mouth. That's your body digesting ahead of schedule. The stomach continues the job with acid, and the intestine finishes it off. But the first factory is between your teeth. Every bite isn't just cutting food up. It's the starting gun for the entire process. Your whole life you've heard we're 90% water. Practically a bottle with legs. That's a myth. You got sold an inflated number. An average adult is around 60% water, not 90. Babies start out higher, close to 75%, and that proportion drops as the years go by. Fat holds very little water, and muscle holds a lot, so two people of the same weight can have very different percentages depending on how they're built on the inside. It is true that you won't last many days without water, since even your blood is largely liquid. But going from that to 90% is a huge stretch. You're not a walking bottle. You're more like a really firm gelatin. You've got plenty of water, but not enough to slosh around. You sneeze, and ochoo comes flying out, and you figure the air comes out at some random, unremarkable speed. That's a myth. It's an incredibly fast burst. The air from a sneeze can shoot out at tens of miles per hour, and the droplets you expel travel quite far, farther than you'd imagine. It's a reflex designed to instantly expel anything irritating your nose. Dust, pepper, or a virus. Blasting it away with full force. That's why, when someone sneezes without covering their mouth, they scatter droplets several feet in every direction. It's your nose's emergency ejection system, running at full throttle. It's not a little puff. It's a cannon blast of air that comes out like a gust. Covering your mouth isn't just politeness. It's containing a genuine miniature storm. Your nose has a turbine built in. You think breathing means your lungs inflate and deflate on their own, like two balloons filling up with air. That's a myth. Your lungs don't have the muscles to do that by themselves. The one doing the work is the diaphragm, a large umbrella-shaped muscle sitting right below your lungs. When the diaphragm drops, it enlarges the space in your chest and creates suction that pulls air inward. When it rises, it pushes the air back out. Your lungs are passengers. They let themselves be stretched by that pressure change. They don't move on their own. It's more suction than inflation, more vacuum cleaner than balloon. You breathe roughly 12 to 20 times a minute without thinking about it. Thanks to that quiet muscle working day and night, the real star of your breathing isn't even in your lungs. You're asked what's hardest in your body, and you say, the bones. Obviously. Wrong. The hardest thing you have isn't a bone, it's the enamel on your teeth. Enamel is the layer covering the visible part of your teeth, and it's the hardest, most mineralized tissue in the human body, even harder than bone. It's built to withstand years and years of chewing without wearing down. Its big problem is that, unlike bone, enamel doesn't regenerate. If it breaks or wears away, it doesn't grow back. That's why you have to take care of it, because once you lose it, there's no natural replacement. It's like the toughest armor you own, but a single-use one. Your hardest material isn't in your skeleton. It's smiling out of your mouth, and it's irreplaceable. For centuries, women got blamed if a baby was born a girl or a boy, as if she were the one choosing. Wrong, laboratory wrong. The one who determines the baby's sex is the father's sperm. The mother's egg always carries an X chromosome, no exceptions. The sperm, on the other hand, can carry either an X or a Y. If the one that arrives first carries an X, a girl forms. If it carries a Y, a boy forms. In other words, the lottery is entirely run by the father, not the mother. It's pure chance. Almost a biological coin flip, decided right at the moment of fertilization. All those kings who cast off their wives for not giving them a son were shaking their fist at the mirror without even knowing it. The decision was never the queen's to make. It was carried in by the king's own messenger. You'd imagine your blood travels slowly, taking forever to make its way around your whole body and back to the heart. That's a myth. It's a bullet. At rest, a drop of blood makes a complete loop around your body, from the heart to your toe and back, in roughly 1 minute. When you exercise and your heart pumps harder, that loop gets even faster. Your circulatory system is an incredibly efficient highway that delivers oxygen to every corner of your body in seconds. That's why if you hurt a finger, the medicine you took reaches that spot quickly. There are no endless delays, no blood waiting in line. In the time it takes you to tie your shoelace, your blood has already gone around your entire body once. 1 minute per lap, no tolls, no traffic jams. You eat something delicious and give your tongue all the credit, as if flavor were purely a mouth thing. Way too incomplete. Most of what you call flavor isn't actually the tongue's doing, it's the nose's. The tongue detects a handful of basic tastes: sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami. But all the nuance, the aroma that lets you tell a strawberry apart from a raspberry, comes from your sense of smell, from the air that rises from your mouth up into your nose from behind as you chew. It's estimated that a large part of the flavor experience depends on smell. That's why when you're badly congested, food tastes like nothing, even though your tongue is working exactly the same as always. Plug your nose and chew some. You'll see how it fades out. Flavor is a duet, and the nose sings lead. You'd think an astronaut steps off the ship measuring exactly the same as when they left. False. In space, without gravity pulling downward, the spine decompresses and stretches out a little. The discs between the vertebrae stop being squeezed by the weight of the body and gain some space. And that's why, after some time in orbit, many astronauts stretch up to about 3% taller, which in an average person is around 2 inches. The thing is that growth spurt is temporary once they return to Earth and gravity flattens them back down. They recover their original height fairly quickly. You're also a little taller in the morning than at night, for the same reason. Gravity always has you a bit compressed. You go up into space and your spine finally gets to breathe. Here's the one I promised you. You go to the salon. They trim your ends. And they tell you, this way it grows faster and stronger. Complete myth. Hair grows from the root, from the follicle inside your scalp, not from the tip. Cutting the tip doesn't send any signal to the root. It's impossible for the bottom to find out the top just got a trim. What the trim actually does is remove the damaged, split ends, so the hair looks healthier and neater. And since it breaks off less, it seems like it's growing more. But the actual growth rate, around less than ½ an inch a month, doesn't change even a little. It's like mowing the lawn expecting the roots to grow faster. It just doesn't make sense. A neat trim, sure, but not a growth engine. You run 2 blocks, your legs get tired, and you figure your heart, being a muscle too, gets tired the exact same way they do. False. Your heart is made of a special type of muscle, cardiac muscle, built to beat without resting for your entire life. Unlike the muscle in your arm, which wears out quickly, the heart muscle is packed with mitochondria, the cell's power plants, and it burns a steady stream of fuel so it never runs out. On top of that, between one beat and the next, it gets a tiny fraction of a second to rest, so it relaxes millions of times a day in the very act of working. It beats around 100,000 times a day without ever taking a day off. It's the only muscle that starts working before you're even born and never stops. No vacation days. A tireless workaholic, and for good reason. You swallow a bite and think it drops down into your stomach because it falls from gravity, like a coin sliding down a tube. False. And here's an easy way to prove it. Food doesn't fall. Your own esophagus pushes it through a movement called peristalsis, waves of muscle that squeeze and drag the bite downward, the same way you push toothpaste out by squeezing the tube. That's why you can swallow lying down, and even standing upside down water would still reach your stomach. Astronauts eat and drink just fine in zero gravity, with nothing falling at all. Gravity helps a little bit, but the heavy lifting is done by that living muscular tube, rippling on its own. It's not a chute that food slides down, it's a conveyor belt that squeezes and pushes. Your throat carries the food along. It doesn't just let it drop. You think your eyes see the way a camera does, capturing a full, sharp, upright image in one single shot. That's told wrong on every level. First, the image that enters your eye arrives flipped upside down, and it's your brain that turns it right side up. Second, you only see with real sharpness in a tiny area right at the center of your field of vision. Everything else looks blurry and low detail, even though you don't notice it. Your brain fills in the gaps and builds the sensation of a complete, clear image by constantly moving your eyes around without you ever realizing it. On top of that, you have a blind spot in each eye where you see nothing at all, and your brain quietly papers over it. What you see is, in large part, a reconstruction your brain builds for you. It's not a photograph. It's an animation stitched together on the fly by a very skilled director. You have 2 kidneys and assume you absolutely need both to keep on living. False. With a single healthy kidney, you can live a completely normal life. In fact, some people are born with just one and only find out as adults, by accident, during an ultrasound. Each kidney filters your blood and clears out waste, but they have so much reserve capacity that one alone can do almost the entire job the pair would normally do. That's exactly why living donor transplants exist. Someone gives you a kidney and goes on doing perfectly well with the one they have left. Nature built you with a spare part to spare, like a car that comes with a built-in spare tire. It's not that you have an extra kidney, it's that your body was built with margin. 2 just in case. 1 just in case of the just in case. You measure yourself and assume you're the same height in the morning as at night, that your height is one fixed number. That's a myth. You're a little taller when you get up than when you go to bed. Throughout the day, gravity gradually compresses the discs between the vertebrae in your spine, those gel-like cushions that separate one bone from the next. With the hours spent standing and sitting, they flatten a little, and you lose a few millimeters up to about an inch in some people. At night, while you sleep lying down, those discs rehydrate and regain their thickness, and by morning, you wake up at your maximum height. So if you want to look taller in a measurement, get measured right when you wake up. Your body shrinks during the day and stretches back out at night. You're like an accordion, shorter when you go to sleep. You assume that if an organ gets damaged or a piece gets removed, that piece is gone forever. With the liver, it's almost the opposite. The liver is the absolute champion of regeneration among your organs. If surgery removes a significant part of it, the liver can grow back and recover much of its original size within a matter of weeks. That's why living donor liver transplants exist. Someone donates a piece of their liver, and both the donor's remaining piece and the recipient's transplanted piece can grow and function properly. It's like a lizard regrowing its tail, but as an internal organ version. None of your other organs come anywhere close to that kind of regrowth power. The liver doesn't just filter toxins and process everything you eat. On top of that, it repairs itself, a worker that rebuilds itself while it's still on the clock. You fall asleep and assume your ears go to sleep too, that they stop working until the alarm goes off. False. Your ears keep picking up sound all night long. They don't have a lid or an off switch. What changes is that your brain filters out most of those sounds so you can rest. Street noise or the fan blend into the background, but an important sound, like your name or a baby crying, cuts through the filter and wakes you up. That's why a mother wakes up to her baby's soft little whimper and not to a truck driving by. Your ears never close the door. The one who decides what gets let in is your brain. You sleep with the microphones on and a very selective doorman, choosing who gets let through. You move your fingers, make a fist, tap a key, and assume you have muscles right there inside each finger. Actually, it's the opposite. Your fingers have almost no muscles of their own to move them. The strength comes from farther back, from muscles in your forearm and palm, connected to the fingers by cables called tendons. When those forearm muscles contract, they pull on the tendons and the fingers move, like a puppet dancing when someone pulls the strings from above. That's why, if you tense your hand, you can see the tendons standing out on the back of your hand and forearm, not in the finger itself. All the power of your grip is generated by a motor sitting far away from the finger. You play the piano with your fingers, but the music is really being sent by your forearm pulling the strings. Don't go anywhere just yet, because in Myth 45, I'm going to show you where you've got the strangest, smallest bone in your entire body hidden away. You're not going to believe it. Let's keep going. You get embarrassed, your cheeks turn red, and it drives you crazy that you can't control it. And you really can't, because it doesn't depend on your willpower at all. When you get embarrassed, your automatic nervous system fires off. The same one that runs your heart and digestion without you asking it to do anything. That system dilates the blood vessels in your face, more blood reaches the skin, and the redness shows up. The curious part is that blushing is one of the few reactions this visible and social, and it shows up exactly when you least want it to. No matter how much you tell yourself don't turn red, there's no button to stop it. Because your autopilot is the one running the show. It's your body giving you away without permission. The more you try to hide it, the more it shows. Blushing doesn't take orders, it does whatever it wants. You picture your intestine as a short little tube, a couple of feet coiled up in your belly. That's a myth, it's a lot longer than that. Unclassic measurements. Taken after death, the small intestine reaches about 20 to 23 feet. But in a living person, with the muscle tensed, it measures more like 10 to 16 feet. And adding the large intestine, you comfortably land at 16 to 23 feet of tubing. All of that is folded and packed into your abdomen with incredible neatness, like an enormously long hose stored away in a tiny little box. And it's not just long. On the inside, it has millions of folds and tiny finger-like structures that multiply the surface area for absorbing nutrients, covering an enormous total area. It's your absorption factor. Miles of piping in a minimal amount of space. What you thought was a short pipe is actually a winding highway longer than you are tall. You've got a labyrinth stored away in there. You think your memories stay recorded exactly as they happened, like a saved video you play back identically every time. False. Your memory isn't a fixed file. It's more like a reconstruction you rebuild every single time you remember something. Every time you bring up a memory, your brain reassembles it. And in that process, it can tweak it a little, mix it with new things, or blend it with what other people told you about it. That's why two people remember the same birthday party in different ways. And that's why sometimes you swear you remember something that actually happened differently. It's not that you have a bad memory. That's just how memory works for everyone. Every memory is a photo you retouch a little bit each time you look at it. You're not replaying the past, you're redrawing it. And without meaning to, you change the details. Fat is fat. Something bad you need to get rid of, right? Incomplete. You actually have at least two very different types of fat. White fat is the one everyone knows, the kind that stores energy and builds up around your belly and hips. But you also have brown fat, which does something incredible. It burns energy to generate heat. Babies have quite a bit of brown fat because it helps them regulate their temperature before they're able to shiver properly. This fat is packed with mitochondria, those cellular power plants that give it its brown color. And it works like a little internal furnace. Adults keep some of it too, especially when we're exposed to cold, so not all fat makes you gain weight. Some of it works like a heater. One stores fuel, the other burns it to keep you warm. Fat isn't always the enemy. Sometimes it's what's keeping you warm from the inside. If someone asks where your stomach is, you touch your belly right around your belly button. That's where it hurts when your stomach hurts. So logically, that's where it must be. False, it's actually much higher up. Your stomach sits right up against your ribs, more toward the left side, almost tucked behind them. What you actually have at belly button height is feet and feet of intestine, not your stomach. When you say, "my stomach hurts," and grab the middle of your belly, you're almost always pointing at something else entirely. The real stomach lives up top, protected by your rib cage like a tenant on the top floor. You've spent your whole life pointing at the wrong apartment. The belly is huge, and the stomach lives up on the top floor of the building. You get older, wrinkles show up, and you blame it purely on the passage of time, as if it were unavoidable at that speed. Incomplete. Age plays a role, sure, but the main culprit behind most visible wrinkles is the sun. Ultraviolet radiation breaks down collagen and elastin, the fibers that keep your skin firm and elastic. The sun-driven aging is called photoaging, and it's estimated that a large chunk of visible skin aging comes from that. Not from the clock. It becomes crystal clear when you compare the skin on an area that's always covered, like your backside, with the skin on your face or hands, which gets sun exposure your whole life. The first one looks noticeably younger, even though they're the exact same age. The calendar isn't what's wrinkling you. The sun is. You yawn and figure it's pure sleepiness or boredom, nothing more. Incomplete. Yawning is stranger and more interesting than it looks. One of the strongest hypotheses in current science is that yawning helps regulate the temperature of your brain, like a little fan that cools it down when it heats up a bit. When you yawn, you take a big gulp of air and increase blood flow, helping bring the temperature down a few degrees up there. That's why you sometimes yawn during transition moments, when you're shifting from active to relaxed or the other way around. And on top of that, it's contagious. You see someone yawn and suddenly you feel the urge too, something tied to empathy. It's not just a sign of boredom, it's thermal maintenance. Your brain opens the windows to grab some fresh air. You assume that at night, your brain shuts down and rests like a computer in sleep mode. False. While you're sleeping, your brain is far from still. In some phases, it's working just as much or more than when you're awake. During sleep, it sorts and consolidates what you learned during the day, moving memories from short-term to long-term storage, like someone filing papers into the right drawers. On top of that, a cleanup system kicks in that sweeps away waste that built up while you were awake, almost like the office's overnight cleaning shift. In the phase where vivid dreams happen, electrical activity is intense. Sleeping isn't switching the machine off, it's switching it to a different task. You get to rest, but your brain stays busy doing maintenance and inventory. You close your eyes and the second shift clocks in. A lot of people believe that if you train, the fat you had turns into muscle, like clay changing shape. False. They're two completely different tissues, and one doesn't transform into the other. Fat is adipose tissue. It stores energy. Muscle is contractile tissue. It generates force. When you train and eat well, two separate things happen at the same time. You lose fat on one hand and gain muscle on the other. It looks like a transformation, but they're two parallel processes, not some magical conversion. It's like swapping out the furniture in a house. You take out the old couch and bring in a new one, but the old couch didn't turn into the new one. It doesn't work the other way around either. If you stop training, muscle doesn't turn into fat. Your muscle shrinks and you might build up fat. Two separate things, not one. You think someone has a deep or high-pitched voice depending on how big their mouth is. False. Your pitch depends mainly on your vocal cords, which are folds inside your larynx, in your throat. As air passes through, those folds vibrate, and the longer and thicker they are, the deeper the voice sounds. Just like thicker guitar strings produce the lowest notes. That's why during puberty, many boys' voices change because the larynx grows and the cords lengthen and thicken. The mouth and nose just work as a resonance chamber that gives the sound its final color. Pitch is set by those tiny cords hidden in your neck, not by the size of your mouth. You're a string instrument with the sound box tucked away in your throat. You sit in an odd position for a while. Your foot falls asleep with that tingling feeling, and you say, "My circulation got cut off." Almost a myth. It's not that the foot is short on blood, it's that a nerve is being compressed and stops transmitting properly. When you press on an area from sitting in a bad position, you compress a nerve and it stops sending signals properly, so the brain receives confusing information, and that numb, tingly sensation shows up. When you move and free up the nerve, here comes the funny part. That intense tingling while the nerve gets back to normal. That's your nerve reconnecting, not blood suddenly rushing back in. It's a pinched wire that stops transmitting, not a clogged hose. You move your foot, the nerve wakes back up, and everything falls back into place. Wire freed, signal restored. You picture a bone and imagine something white, dry, and dead, like the one in a cartoon that gets thrown to a dog. Completely false. Your bones are living tissue, full of blood vessels and nerves, breathing and feeding themselves just like any other part of you. A bone is roughly a quarter water, and it's constantly being renewed. There are cells that break down old bone and others that build new bone in a construction project that never closes. That's why a fracture heals. Because the bone is alive and repairs itself. That skeleton of yours isn't a fixed structure. It completely remodels itself over the years. That dry stick the dog gets is dead. Yours on the inside is more alive than a seed bed. Support structure and living machine, all in one. You look at a fitness magazine cover, see the famous six-pack, and figure it's 6 or 8 separate muscles, one per square. Almost a myth. It's a single long muscle, the rectus abdominis, running from your chest down to your pelvic bone. What creates the illusion of the little squares are bands of connective tissue crossing it, like stitching, dividing a single piece into sections. When that muscle is well developed, and there's little fat on top, those seams become visible and the little squares appear. That's why some people have 4, others 6, and others 8. It's the genetics of those bands, not how many muscles they have. You can't grow more squares because there's only one muscle. The six-pack looks like it's made of separate pieces, but it's actually one whole bar. The baby is born, you look at its eyes, and you already label it, it's got light eyes like grandpa. Almost a myth. It's not settled yet. Many babies' eye color can change over their first few months of life, sometimes even up to their first year. That happens because color depends on a pigment called melanin, and at birth, many babies still have very little of it in the iris. As melanin gradually builds up, eyes that once looked blue or gray can start darkening toward green or brown. It doesn't always change, but it happens fairly often, especially in fair-skinned babies. So if you wrote down the eye color on day 1, you might have to correct the baby book a few months later. The final color takes its time to reveal itself, like a photo developing on its own. Here's the one I promised you. You think the tiniest bone in your body is in a toe or a finger, right at the very tip. False. It's hidden somewhere you'd never expect inside your ear. It's called the stapes. And it's so small, it measures just a fraction of an inch. Smaller than a grain of rice. It's part of a chain of 3 tiny bones in the middle ear that transmit sound vibrations inward so you can hear. Without that tiny little bone, you wouldn't hear well at all. It's the smallest bone in your body, and it handles one of the most delicate jobs there is. Passing music and voices along to your inner ear. The champion of tininess isn't out in your limbs. It's tucked away right next to your eardrum. Small as a grain, essential as any other. You'd assume the blood running through you today is the same blood you've had since you were a kid, circulating nonstop. That's a myth? Your blood is constantly being renewed. Red blood cells, the ones that carry oxygen, live for around 120 days and then retire to make room for new ones your bone marrow produces. That means every few months, you have an almost entirely different fleet of red blood cells than you had a while back. Your marrow produces millions of red blood cells every second, a factory pace from another planet. Your blood looks the same, but on the inside, it's a river where the water is never standing still. Your body is a factory that never stops running. Today's blood isn't the blood you had 4 months ago, even though it looks identical. You get hiccups and always blame it on eating too quickly. Sometimes that's true, but hiccups involve something else going on inside. A hiccup is a sudden involuntary contraction of the diaphragm. that big muscle involved in breathing. When the diaphragm gives that sudden jerk, you gasp in air abruptly, and a valve in your throat snaps shut extremely fast. And that closing is what makes the hic sound. It can be triggered by eating or drinking too fast, sure, but also by swallowing air, by a sudden change in temperature, or even by strong emotion or nerves. It's a reflex, a momentary short circuit in the nerves that control that muscle. It's not your stomach protesting, it's your diaphragm having a spasm. Hiccups have a mysterious origin, a muscle with a passing tick. Eating slowly helps, but it's not the only cause. You watch a newborn baby crying at the top of its lungs and assume tears are streaming down its cheeks. Almost a myth. Newborns cry loudly, but during their first weeks of life, they do it without any tears. Their tear ducts are still immature and don't produce enough fluid for droplets to actually fall. That's why, in those first few days, the baby puts on the entire crying show. Red face and all the wailing, but with dry eyes. Real tears usually show up later, somewhere between the first few weeks and a couple of months. Only then does that crying start being accompanied by the droplets you associate with tears. Full-on wailing. Zero water. The baby cries with the entire orchestra playing, but the tear pipeline is still under construction. All shout, no rain yet. You've heard that the neurons you were born with are the only ones you'll ever have, that no more get created once you're an adult. Modern science says something different. In certain regions of the adult brain, especially an area called the hippocampus tied to memory and learning, new neurons can still be generated. A process called neurogenesis. For years, it was a major point of debate among scientists, until in 2025, a study published in the journal Science identified the cells that produce these new neurons in the adult hippocampus. It's not happening wildly across the whole brain, but it breaks the old idea that the adult brain is frozen and can only lose neurons. On top of that, your brain keeps reorganizing itself your entire life, creating and strengthening connections every time you learn something new at any age. Learning a language or an instrument as an adult reshapes your head. You're not condemned to a brain that only wears down. You've got both a factory and a remodeling workshop open at any age. You're congested, you breathe through your mouth, and figure it doesn't matter. The air still gets in either way. Almost a myth. Your nose isn't just a simple hole. It's a top-of-the-line air filter and conditioner. It has tiny hairs and mucus that trap dust, pollen, and germs before they reach your lungs. It also warms and humidifies the air so it arrives at your lungs at just the right temperature instead of dry and cold like it does coming through your mouth. When you breathe through your mouth, you skip all those filters and send raw air straight to your lungs. That's why breathing a lot through your mouth dries out your throat and lets more junk get through. Your nose is a climate control system with a built-in filter. Your mouth is the service entrance you only open when the main door is blocked. That little bone at the very bottom of your spine, the tailbone. Everyone treats it like useless leftover, the tail we don't need anymore. Incomplete. The tailbone isn't some decoration left over from our ancestors with no function at all. Several important muscles, ligaments and tendons attached to that little bone, including the ones in your pelvic floor, which support organs in the lower abdomen and help you control things as basic as going to the bathroom. On top of that, when you sit down and lean back, the tailbone helps distribute your weight and give you stability. That's why, when someone hits it hard, everything hurts and even sitting down becomes difficult. It's not evolutionary trash. It's a key anchor point. That supposedly useless little tail is actually a fundamental hook, small and underappreciated, but hard at work. You see a drawing of two lungs and figure that inside they're just two hollow, not particularly big sacs. False, on the inside they're a whole universe. Your lungs are packed with millions of tiny sacs called alveoli, where oxygen passes into your blood. If you unfolded all of that internal surface and spread it flat, it would cover an enormous area, somewhere around 750 square feet. Nearly a third of a tennis court. All of that is compressed and folded inside your chest. That massive surface area is what lets you absorb oxygen so quickly with every breath. It's like an endless sponge with far more nooks and crannies than you'd ever imagine. From the outside, they look like two ordinary balloons. On the inside, They're a folded maze with a third of a tennis court packed into your chest. Tiny on the outside, immense on the inside. You think you're the master of your own muscles, that they move whenever you want them to. Only partly true. You have muscles that obey your will, like your bicep or your leg muscles. Those you move whenever you want. But you also have an entire army working on its own, never asking your permission for anything. Your heart beats on its own. The muscles in your intestine push food along on their own. The ones that move your pupil and adjust your blood vessels do too. These are involuntary muscles, and thank goodness for that. Because if you had to remember to beat your heart every single second, you wouldn't survive a nap. Your body has manual muscles that you operate and automatic muscles that run on their own 24 hours a day. You're the driver of some of it, but most of the car runs on autopilot. And lucky for you, it does. You assume you feel cold evenly across all your skin. Incomplete. Cold and heat receptors aren't spread out evenly. There are areas that are much more sensitive than others. On top of that, your body prioritizes protecting your core, where your vital organs are, so when it's cold, it redirects blood away from your extremities and toward your torso. And that's why your hands and feet are the first things to get cold, not because they're naturally more sensitive to cold, but because your body cuts back their supply a bit to protect your heart and other organs. It's an emergency decision, sacrificing the periphery to save the core. Your freezing hands aren't a flaw, they're part of a strategy. Your body is like a country that, in a crisis, protects the capital and lets the borders go cold. A tear is a tear. Salty water. End of story, right? Almost a myth. You actually have 3 different types of tears, and they're not even made of the same thing. There are basal tears, which keep your eye moist all day long without you ever noticing them. There are reflex tears, the ones that show up when you cut an onion or get something in your eye, loaded up to clean and protect. And there are emotional tears, the ones that fall when sadness or strong emotion hits you. Some studies suggest emotional tears have a slightly different composition, with more proteins and certain hormones tied to stress. It's almost as if your body cries differently depending on the reason. The same little drop that cleans your eye isn't the same one that comes out when emotion takes over. 3 kinds of tears, 3 different recipes, 1 single outlet. You lift weights and figure the muscle grows right there, in the moment of effort. It's actually the opposite. When you train hard, you put your muscle under tension that triggers repair signals and tiny microscopic tears in the fibers. The muscle doesn't grow during exercise, it grows afterward, while you're resting. During rest, and with good nutrition, your body builds new proteins and assembles fibers that are a bit thicker and stronger than before. So you're ready for next time. That's why rest is part of training and not some optional bonus. If you train the same muscle every single day without giving it time, you don't let it repair, and you end up gaining less. The gym breaks it down. Rest builds it up. Your muscle gets bigger on the couch, not in the weight room. Training gives the order. Sleep does the actual work. You crack your knuckles, it makes a crack sound, and you'd swear it's bone rubbing against bone. False. That sound doesn't come from bones colliding. Inside your joints, there's a lubricating fluid called synovial fluid with dissolved gases in it. When you suddenly stretch the joint, a gas bubble forms all at once in that fluid, and that crack is the sound of that bubble appearing, a phenomenon called cavitation. This was confirmed by watching the joint in real time with an MRI. The sound matches up exactly with the bubble forming. That's why after cracking a knuckle, you have to wait a while before you can do it again. The gas needs time to dissolve back into the fluid. You're not wearing down bone, you're popping microscopic little gas bubbles. It's bubble physics, not skeleton on skeleton impact. And no, it won't give you arthritis. You were taught that fingerprints, those grooves on your fingertips, exist to give you grip, like the tread on a tire. Sounds logical, but the evidence points the other way. Studies measuring friction found that those little grooves actually reduce the contact area on smooth surfaces a bit, so they don't help with grip as much as people thought, and sometimes they even make it slightly worse. The strongest hypothesis today is that they're mainly there for fine touch. Those ridges amplify vibrations as you run your finger across a texture, helping your sensors pick up details more clearly. In other words, they're more about feeling than gripping. Your fingerprint is a high sensitivity texture reader, less like tire rubber, more like a record player needle. And as a bonus, they make you one of a kind. The eye doctor tells you your vision is perfect and you think, great, I've got the best eyesight there is, as good as it gets. Almost a myth, that perfect score, or the famous 20/20 measurement used in other countries, doesn't mean flawless or maximum vision. It means normal vision. It's the baseline for what an average person can see at a certain distance. There are people who see even better than that, able to make out details the average person simply can't. So that number isn't a ceiling, it's a midpoint, the expected standard. You can have perfect 20/20 vision and still have someone standing right next to you seeing more sharp. It's not the mountain peak, it's the average elevation of the neighborhood. Perfect vision doesn't have one neat round number, and there's always someone who sees a little farther than you do. You look at your hairless arms, your belly with no thick hair on it, and assume you only have hair in certain spots. Almost a myth. You have hair covering almost your entire body. It's just that a lot of it is an extremely fine, short, nearly transparent hair called vellus hair, which is barely visible. The only areas that are truly hairless are the palms of your hands, the soles of your feet, and your lips, and not much else. Everything else is covered in these tiny little hairs that you sometimes only notice when light hits them just right or they stand up from the cold. We have roughly the same number of hair follicles as other primates. The difference is that in us, many of them produce hair that's practically invisible. You're not hairless, you're hairy in a discrete version. You've got a coat hiding in plain sight. You'd assume all your hair grows evenly, like grass, every single strand rising together at the same pace. Incomplete. Every hair on your head is doing its own thing, in different staggered phases. One follicle can be in a growth phase for years. Another one right next to it has already entered a resting phase, and another is about to fall out to make room for a new one. It's like a stadium crowd where some are standing, some are sitting, and others are heading for the exit, all at the same time. That's why you don't lose all your hair at once. And it doesn't all grow in together overnight. On average, hair grows a bit less than half an inch a month, but every single strand runs on its own clock. Your head isn't a field planted all at once. It's a city with thousands of different clocks running. You trim your nails and assume the ones on your hands and the ones on your feet grow at the same speed. False. Fingernails grow quite a bit faster than toenails, up to about 2 or 3 times faster. Fingernails grow on average about 1/8 of an inch a month, while toenails move a lot slower. It's thought that better blood flow to the hands plays a role, along with the fact that you use and bump your hands a lot more, which stimulates growth. On top of that, the nail on your longest finger tends to grow a bit faster than the one on your shortest. That's why you trim your fingernails far more often than your toenails. They don't all run at the same pace. Each nail runs its own race, and the hands win it every time. You assume you breathe through both nostrils equally in equal parts all the time. That's a myth. Generally, you breathe more through one nostril than the other, and every few hours they switch off. This is called the nasal cycle. While one nostril handles most of the workload, the other one rests a little, with its internal tissue slightly swollen, reducing airflow. Then the roles swap on their own without you noticing. It's a normal mechanism controlled by your automatic nervous system, and it helps keep your nose from drying out and helps you pick up certain smells better. That's why sometimes one nostril feels more blocked than the other, even when you're not congested. You don't breathe in a perfect duet. You breathe in shifts. Your 2 nostrils take turns standing guard throughout the day. You stick your tongue out, wiggle it around, and figure it's a muscle. Just one. False. The tongue isn't a muscle, it's a group of several muscles working together. It has muscles that move it side to side and stick it out or pull it in, and others inside it that change its shape, flattening it, curling it, or pointing it. That's why the tongue is so incredibly agile. It can make extremely fine movements for speaking, eating, and swallowing. That combination of muscles is what lets you pronounce complex sounds and move food around precisely while you chew. It's not a single strip of muscle, it's a coordinated team of muscles, a well-oiled crew working together so you can speak and eat. Several engines packed into one piece. You get a cut, it leaves a mark, and you assume that over time it's going to fade away completely and leave nothing behind. Almost a myth. Scars can shrink and lighten a lot over the years, but scar tissue is different from your original skin and usually stays there permanently. When your skin quickly repairs a large wound, it doesn't produce identical skin. It produces a simpler tissue, made of disorganized collagen, without hair follicles or sweat glands. That's why an old scar has no hair on it, looks smoother or shinier, and doesn't sweat the same way. It's an emergency patch your body put in place to close things up fast. Not a perfect restoration. Your skin prioritizes closing over, looking neat. The mark fades, but the memory almost always stays written on your skin. You've heard that if you eat small amounts for a while, your stomach physically shrinks. Almost a myth. Your stomach is an elastic organ. It stretches when you eat a lot and contracts when it's empty, but its actual size doesn't change permanently just because you ate less for a few days. What does change is your perception of hunger and fullness. When you eat smaller portions for a while, your body adjusts, and the "I'm full" signals start showing up earlier. It's not that you have a smaller stomach, it's that your sense of fullness got recalibrated. The organ still has the exact same capacity to stretch. What got retrained is the signal, not the size. Your stomach didn't shrink, the notification changed. You feel full sooner because your body learned to be satisfied with less, not because you're carrying around a smaller tank. You get goosebumps from the cold or from strong emotion, and you figure it's some pointless reaction. Incomplete. Goosebumps are a reflex inherited from our furrier ancestors, and for them it made complete sense. When a heavily furred mammal feels cold, tiny muscles at the base of each hair contract and lift the hair up, trapping a layer of air that provides warmth, the same way a cat puffs itself up. And when it gets scared, that same raised fur makes it look bigger to a rival. We inherited the reflex. But since we lost almost all of our thick body hair, all that's left is that little texture on the skin. It's a physical memory from when we were furrier, a gesture that was useful in your animal ancestors and in you, just stuck around as decoration. The evolutionary history written on your skin. You use the words freckle and mole as if they were synonyms. Any little mark on the skin. Almost a myth. They're actually different things. Freckles are small areas where the skin produced extra melanin due to sun exposure. They tend to be flat. They show up or get darker with sun exposure, and they fade in winter. Moles, on the other hand, are clusters of a certain type of skin cell, the ones that produce color, gathered together into a single spot. And they tend to be more stable. They don't come and go with the sun like freckles do. One is basically a concentrated temporary tan. The other is a fixed cluster of cells. That's why it's worth keeping an eye on moles that change, more so than freckles. They're not the same thing with different names. One is the sun's summer handiwork. The other is a little group of cells that moved in to stay. You'd think that the brain, being so important, must burn a small share of your energy since it doesn't weigh much. It's actually the opposite of what its weight suggests. Your brain weighs only around 2% of your body weight, but it consumes close to 20% of all the energy you use at rest. Or in other words, a tiny fraction of your body takes an enormous slice of your fuel. It's like having a small appliance that still spikes your electric bill. That huge energy cost is because neurons never stop working, sending electrical signals and keeping everything running, even while you sleep or do nothing at all. Thinking, feeling, and regulating your body costs a lot of energy. Small in size, massive in consumption. It weighs almost nothing and still takes an enormous cut of your energy, though your heart and kidneys actually burn even more per pound. Tiny machine, enormous electric bill. You assume being left-handed or right-handed is purely about which hand you write with. Incomplete. Handedness goes way beyond your hand. You also have a dominant foot, the one you use to kick a ball, a dominant eye, the one you unconsciously aim with, and even a preferred ear you use to answer the phone. And they don't always line up on the same side. You might write with your right hand, but kick better with your left. It's estimated that only around 1 in 10 people is left-hand dominant, but the combination of hand, foot, eye, and ear dominance means each person has a fairly unique profile. You're not simply left-handed or right-handed. You're a personal mix of preferences. Your hand is just the most visible part of a much bigger division of labor happening throughout your body. You stand there perfectly still and think you're completely motionless. False. Even when you try not to move, your body is constantly making micro adjustments to keep you upright. Standing isn't a static posture, it's active balance. Your muscles are constantly contracting and relaxing, correcting tiny tilts so you don't fall over. Your inner ear detects the slightest imbalance and sends lightning-fast orders to your muscles to compensate. It's like riding a bike while standing still, a constant adjustment you don't even feel. That's why, if you faint or fall asleep standing up, you collapse, because that invisible work suddenly disappears. You're never actually completely still. You're in a permanent, microscopic sway, standing like a statue on the outside, constantly correcting course on the inside. A tightrope walker without even knowing it. You think your body is already fully built and finished, like a completed building. False. Your body is a permanent construction project. Every day, billions of cells die and get replaced, and just as many are born to take their place. The cells in your skin renew constantly. The ones in your intestine get replaced every few days, and plenty of others follow their own individual turnover schedule. Some cells don't last long and get replaced quickly. Others stick with you for a long time. That constant turnover is what keeps you functioning and repairing the daily wear and tear. You're not a fixed structure. You're a river where the water is always being renewed. The physical you of today has a lot of pieces that weren't there a while ago. You're always halfway under construction, and that's exactly how it should be. And with that, we wrap up a full hour spent inside your own body, taking apart lie after lie about everything you believed about yourself. Leave me a like, subscribe. See you in the next video.